Well, we know that when blackouts are in place, in fact, the power stations are vulnerable to sabotage and theft. So let's talk about this now. Cabinet has given the green light to measures to ban the exports of scrap metal from South Africa. The economy and public infrastructure has seen widespread damage due to the theft of copper cables and other metals. This is then sometimes mixed with waste scrap and exported to other countries. The Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, said that Cabinet last week had considered the draft policy proposals and approved them. They were put forward by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ebrahim Patel. To discuss, we're joined by the CEO of XA International Trade Advisors, Donald Mackay. Mr. Mackay, thank you for being with us. Firstly, when is this ban expected to be in place?
Yeah, we don't know. So Cabinet have announced that they are going to do it, but that there are some legal issues they need to tie up. But I would think imminent, I would guess sometime in the next few weeks.
We know that the damage has been incredible. Theft from power stations, the trains aren't able to work because of infrastructural damage on the tracks. But the jury's out on whether this ban will work. I've heard different opinions. What's yours?
Yeah, I don't, certainly no evidence that the ban will work. The Minister, Patel, didn't provide any kind of information other than saying it will remove the market. But there's in fact very little evidence that the stolen material is simply exported as stolen material. And there's no proposed ban on any of the items that you would make out of stolen copper cable, for example. And we haven't seen the export of copper cable in around a decade. So, yeah, unlikely.
Yeah. So you mean it's processed along the way, or it's mixed with other things, and it doesn't look like stolen copper cables? What is actually exported?
Well, firstly, we're not sure that it is exported. There's a domestic market for the stuff, so that's in itself, it could be consumed locally. It could be melted down into ingots, which are kind of a very weird intermediate industry that has popped up, where you can take the copper cable, melt it down into big copper blocks, and then you can trade with those blocks as you wish. And of course, any stolen material is then rendered untraceable. So these are certainly the options. I don't know because I don't know the people who are stealing the stuff, but those are certainly options at the moment.
Government is talking about a permit for the export of specified semi-processed metal products. Could a permit help so you sort of know who's dealing in these metals and what they're doing with it?
Yeah, so maybe there's a permit at the moment that you have to get to export any kind of scrap. So you're adding on items which should have been on the permit, but the permit in itself doesn't fix the theft problem. And the theft problem, to my mind, is the really big problem. So if people keep stealing the stuff, they'll find ways to get rid of it. The problem is we have to stop the stuff being stolen in the first place, and that clearly is not happening.
And I want to ask if you have any possibilities there, any potential solutions. But the other concerns that have been raised, is there something to stop people from hoarding for 6 months? It would be a 6-month ban, and then they could export. And presumably, if stolen goods are being exported, some of it is being smuggled illegally, and it's being hidden anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, if it's been smuggled, then the ban is not going to make a difference. They're not going to develop a conscience at the point where they have to declare the stolen goods. So that is unlikely to work. I think the challenge we have, so let me in fact answer your question on the hoarding. Hoarding is not really likely because scrap is a relatively low value item, and it occupies a huge amount of space. So there's a lot of money tied up in your scrap that you need to move. So I think the hoarding is unlikely. I think a more likely outcome is that a lot of legitimate scrap will simply not be collected and will end up in a landfill. It's very unlikely that a guy with a huge yard full of relatively low value broken cars and whatnot is going to be able to simply sit on that for 6 months.
All right, then finally, what is the solution? How do we stop the theft? And we've seen public infrastructure denuded.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea, to be honest with you, but I think that's a good question to put to the Minister of Police. I have absolutely no idea how on earth we deal with it, but I would think that catching it at source is what matters. We've seen overall a fairly dramatic drop in the overall amount of scrap metal exported from around 10 billion rand 10 years ago to around 6 billion rand now. So while the exports have been dropping, the theft has been rising. I have absolutely no idea. You'd have to speak to a law enforcement expert.
And we need to understand, like you say, those internal markets, who's using the product and for what. Yeah. Has that research been done? All right, thank you. That was the CEO of XA International Trader Advisor, Donald Mackay.